Hi, nobodies. Like it's a thing. I just figure I'll always say that. Because we are the no. I am a nobody and I want to be somebody. When I'm dead, they'll know just who I am. It's a Marilyn Manson thing. If you've never heard the Nobodies, you've got to listen to it. All of you people who don't listen, don't watch me. So, I was working on a diamond painting and started thinking about one of my friends and how his his mom is dying. And, she's got one of those incurable cancers. And his dad left. A lot of people would be mad about that. And I'm not going to say how my friend feels about it because we don't really talk about it. But part of me thinks that he doesn't quite agree with his dad's decision, shall I say. So I was like, I kind of want to bring it up to him, but I kind of don't because, it's not my place. I don't know his family life. I don't know if, they've always had problems, and this was just like, well, now I've got a good enough reason to leave. I don't know. But what I do know is how people react to things, the various outcomes, the various reactions a person can have. Sometimes, it's almost cliche when like a child dies, the parents or a child disappears, the parents almost always split up. And you do get those cases where people really come together, like it makes the bond stronger. But I think most of us, when we're hurting, we can't handle it. There are certain things that you don't want to see because you can't unsee them. I had a friend that committed suicide. I found him. That image doesn't leave. I watched my mom wither. The last days of her life, even though I have come to accept that I hated her, I still loved her in a way. And she was still a human being. So the image of how she looked before she died, it's not nice. I mean, my brother, he got to see her wither somewhat, but not those last days. That is a sight that I wouldn't want anybody to have. I mean, even my dad, when he died, he just looked pale. He didn't look skeletal. Mom had ALS, so she had the aggressive kind, so she couldn't eat really, so she dropped like well over 100 pounds in less than a year because she would constantly like choke on her food. So, I have seen firsthand what it's like to live with that. And I can totally understand that some people do not want to take that journey to the end with you. They're not strong enough. They want to remember you as a vibrant person, a person that could do things. They don't want to think of you as a skeleton or as a ghost of yourself or watch you decline daily. I mean, and some of them, God love them, they will stick around for a while. But there's a certain point where, everybody's got a breaking point. Some of us are stronger than others. Some of us have our own specific reasons for doing it. Whether they're selfish or noble, it doesn't really matter. it is a truly noble thing to watch somebody, to help somebody and stick with somebody until they die. Because it's grueling. I mean, even if you don't really like them, it's an image that doesn't leave. And it kind of blurs out when you saw them the first time, or before they started to just really go downhill. So you forever see them as that withered, near dead person. And so a lot of people are not strong enough to handle that when it comes to a spouse dying. That they just don't want to see it. And you can't really hold anger for that, because it is a truly horrible thing that if you've seen it before, the idea of seeing it again just sickens you. And some people just are not strong enough for that kind of pain. Or they realize after a while, this is too much for me. I can't. And maybe they walk away thinking that they just need a few days or a few weeks or just a little bit of time. But then they realize that doesn't fix it. Just like the couples that lose a kid, it's a little bit different, because they're both suffering their own thoughts and they're both suffering. There isn't somebody to be supportive to them, and they can't, and when you're dealing with pain, you can't really be that supportive of a person who, even though they're going through the same thing. Now, some people can, and that's how they make it. They lean on each other because, if you take two pieces of wood and lean them against each other, they will stand. But a lot of times people just, they just fall by themselves. So if he ever really gets in discussion with me about it, I'm going to tell him, I'm going to say, hey, don't fault your dad for not wanting to be around for that. Because it's a truly horrific thing to watch somebody die of cancer and other forms of other terminal diseases. This is why I am a big supporter of death with dignity. I think that, in all honesty, we should have clinics like they have in, I believe it's Sweden, where it's a euthanasia clinic. When you get to a point where you say, I'm done, you just go in there and they take care of it. You don't have to do it yourself. You don't have to wait until you only have 6 months to live. Here there are people trying to push legislation in states that do have the death with dignity. They're trying to push legislation to where, it can be more than 6 months that you're, I figure when you get diagnosed with something, you ought to be able to say, hey, when I get to this point in the illness, I want to be done. And, in those death with dignity states, they don't have to die by killing themselves with whatever means they've got around their house, which can be horrific. If you don't do your research on how to kill yourself, it can do a lot of harm to you before you actually pass away. So you don't want somebody to suffer. They're trying to prevent their suffering. They're trying to ease their suffering because they've gotten to that point where it's not worth it anymore, because they're just going to get worse. And my mom, she had 18 months, period. And that was long shot, 18 months after diagnosis of being alive. So they could have extended her life, but she was not living. She was suffering. And I don't live in a state that does death with dignity. And in the states that have death with dignity, you'll see videos of people having to ram their wheelchair into things to give themselves an injection. I think that our medical professionals, once certain things are met, should be able to administer the dose. If you say, hey, when I get to the point where I can't use my arms and my legs and I start to not be able to talk, that's when I want my life to end. And then when you get to that point, it should be done. I mean, the doctor knows you've got a terminal illness, and most doctors, I believe, are for, taking away your pain. And there's absolutely no good reason when somebody's dying of cancer and they've gotten to a point where the doctors induce a coma to ease their suffering. And then they're in this drug-induced coma for months, racking up bills like crazy. And you're just waiting for them to die anyway. That is the whole point. They are not going to wake up again. So why can't we at that point say, it's time? Give the family a chance to really say goodbye. Let the family decide the day, or if they want them to be in a medically induced coma for months. But if they say, hey, he's in too much pain to be awake, let's go ahead. Give people that option, because it, as bad as it is to watch, to see, I don't even want to know how bad it is to have a working mind and be that fucking miserable, because they're fucking miserable. And then when you get to a point where you can't take it anymore, you're not even capable of ending your life. You can't do it. So you're stuck there. And so I don't get people being against like Kevorkian and stuff like that. So that's my thing on that. Have a good day.